Busyness is the choice of a hopeless mind. Because right now, there's a principal somewhere posting a picture on social media about hot Cheetos and an energy drink, thinking they're showing dedication, how important they are because they're so busy, when in reality, they're just revealing that they have poor boundaries, no self worth, and no strategy. Here's what's at stake. You can work yourself into the ground. You could stress about every decision like it's heart surgery, and you could run through the hallways putting out every single fire. And in 50 years, probably less than that, nobody's going to remember your name. Your school won't have your picture hanging in the hallway. The district will replace you before your coffee gets cold. So why are we living like this? Today, Jethro Jones comes back and continues our Reject the Premise series of the Ruckus Cast. In this episode, we dismantle 3 sacred promises that keep school leaders trapped in cycles of exhaustion and martyrdom. We're talking about the mythology of busyness, the lie that all work deserves an A-plus effort, and why stress has become a badge of honor we need to rip off our chest. Because if you're too important for lunch, you've already lost the game. Hey, I'm Danny, and this is Better Leaders, Better Schools, the original Ruckus Cast for innovative school leaders who want to do school different within the traditional confines of the system so that we create campuses worth showing up for. Thanks to Ruckus makers just like you, and because you hit play today. This show ranks in the top 1% of nearly 4 million podcasts worldwide. We'll get into the content in just a second, but first, a message from our show sponsors. For over 30 years, ODP Business Solutions has helped schools transform from whiteboards to smartboards. Why? Because when you get the right tools, everyone wins. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to revolutionize your school's learning spaces. That's odpbusiness.com/education. This episode of Better Leaders, Better Schools is brought to you by Play Piper. At Piper, we believe that STEM doesn't have to feel out of reach. Too many kids love gaming, but give up on science and engineering because school doesn't spark their interest. That's where Piper comes in. Hands-on STEM kits designed to turn curiosity into confidence and keep the pipeline of future innovators flowing strong. You can learn more at playpiper.com. That's playpiper.com. Over 1 million teachers rely on IXL because it's empowering, it helps them make better decisions with reliable data, and it adapts instruction based on student performance. You can get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right. We were admiring how much gray I have in my hair, and hopefully you're watching this, right? Because then you could see. And Jethro, you got some too, and that means we're aging and maybe getting to be cranky old men, possibly. I'm not sure.
Yep.
I'm not yelling at kids to get off my lawn yet, right? So that's good. That's like next level. I think Super
Yep.
Saiyan, next level old manness. But I am finding myself like I almost want to say I hate social media now, right? Like all of it, just all
Yeah.
of it. And I have a reason for that. I'll share that in a second. And then I'm getting mad at a lot of the products I buy, like tech products. There's a lesson for school leadership here. So here's the lesson. I think what's happening with social media and with some of these tech products is that obviously, and even me and you, right? We love experimenting with AI, right? Like, and how can we leverage that to be innovative, do the stuff we talk about on the show, right? Create a campus experience we're showing up for, reimagining the system within a traditional setting, and so that it's a campus experience you want to show up for. My concern is I think on social media, there's just a lot of like AI created content that's just so stupid. It's like, why am I even logging in? Because it's not human anymore. And then the tech side of things, right? I think maybe there's been so many layoffs potentially with engineers and stuff that I don't know. This is all just a guess, but maybe that's what's going on, or I'm just an old man, or it's a combination.
Yeah. I mean, it could be certainly that you're an old man. So I am currently not logged into my social media accounts for about a little bit less than the last month, and then continuing through until the end of this month, which is October. And so about 2 months where I'm not on social media. And I got to say, like, it's such a time suck. And there's so little value coming back at me that it really has not been bad to not be part of it.
Right.
So in the old days, I used to get a lot of engagement. I would have conversations and connect with people, and it was really great. And now that just doesn't happen. So either people aren't seeing my stuff or they're not interacting with me or whatever. I still am signed into my auto poster that posts for me on a schedule. So I do still post things there. So you may see some things, but then I accidentally opened a browser that was signed in still, even though I thought I'd signed out of all of them. And I looked at my notifications and there was nothing there. Oh, like nobody's talking with me about stuff. And so it's better to just to take a step back from that. But I hear you on the frustrations, and especially as it relates to AI also, like there's a lot of AI slop, that's the term, that is out there of things that are just not beneficial, not worthwhile. And some of it is really fascinating, but a lot of it is just total slop. And
Yeah.
that what do we feed slop to? We feed it to pigs. And so don't be a pig.
Don't be a pig. So in the big lesson, I want the ruckus maker listening, watching to get would be just to keep the human centered, in the work still. So I think we should still explore, right, all the ways AI might be able to enhance and yeah, create an even more meaningful experience for our students and keep it human centered. So looks like you want to say something on that.
Yeah. Well, the key is that we need to really be asking ourselves, should we even be doing that thing that we're using AI to help us do?
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
right.
like, if there's an email that needs to be sent out, should you even be sending the email? Should you even be using AI to respond to the email when really what you need to do is pick up the phone and call somebody and talk
Mm,
to them, or walk down the hall and talk to them? And so, the frustration I'm feeling is not enough people are talking about should we even be doing these things. And so a lot of people are talking about, oh, AI is great because it does the work for you, but should you even be doing the
doing the
work in the
work.
first
Yeah, yeah.
place? Which is
That's a
a lot
great
of what we've been talking about this whole time on this book.
reject the premise, right? And we're gonna get to the three things we want to talk about here in a second. I love that. I know you've been doing a lot of speaking on AI, around the country. I was brought in and I got to speak at a really cool district in Marysville, Ohio, and we had a blast. And they said I over delivered, which it's great feedback, right? Getting from the group. The interesting thing, right? They wanted me to come in and talk about AI, and I asked why now, why me? And they said, well, you're the do school different guy, right? We've been an innovative district this whole time, and now AI is here. And we want to continue to lead and be innovative, so we want to hear from you. And so I give them my best, but the interesting thing, and I wonder if they were shocked a bit in the intro. I said, I'm not an AI expert, right? I don't code. I don't even really vibe code, right? But what I'm going to share with you today are sort of 10 sort of mindsets or lenses, to look at AI, which I'm just trying to double click on what you said, which is, that would be the 11th principle if I borrow from you. But that would be, should we even be doing this in the first place, right? Which is a really solid point. And I don't know when this airs compared to another show, but practicing for that workshop, I recorded the presentation, right? And I'm going to release some of it as a podcast. So, anyways, yeah, if you're interested in the mindsets and that kind of thing. All right. Right before we get into reject the premise, one more just show and tell, because I always love show and tell. And can you see all that? Because I have my browser
Yep.
sort of smaller. So
Yep. I can see it.
um this is just an image, you can see a lot of Disney stuff on there. I'm going to remove it so I can speak into my microphone. And it basically is just a map. And for those of you that aren't watching, it connects a lot of stuff. Like in the center is the theatrical films, which is really interesting, right? Like not the parks, not necessarily like the cartoons and the shorts or the merch and that kind of stuff, comics, but the like the movies. but then there was stuff all around it and arrows that fed everything leads to the movies. For me and my internal team, I like to say all roads lead to the mastermind. That's what I want. That's the highest level way we support, school leaders and ruckus makers. But the reason I showed that, like just Google, I don't know, like Disney and maybe business plan or business plan map or something. Did you find it when I told you? Maybe you looked it up. I don't know.
I did. Yep. I found it. I may have closed the window already, but I did
But
find it.
I bet you're smart enough that you could find it again because I want
I
to
bet
give
I could.
I want to give the ruckus maker the actual terms that you used because I'm not sure what would produce the result. But just as an owner of a business, I thought it was interesting. I printed it in Canva, got it framed so it looks all nice. And for me, it's an inspiration of the Better Leaders, Better Schools, ruckus makers ecosystem. How does it all tie in together? And if all roads lead to the mastermind, then what does that look like as a visual? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so ruckus maker, right now we're talking to you that's listening or watching. For your school, what is the essential thing, the main thing? What are your theatrical films or your version of the mastermind? Could you identify that, right? So that's an interesting question, number one. And then after you figure out the main reason you exist, the main thing you want to be known for, what distinguishes you as a school, how does everything else feed it? I think that would be a cool exercise, to put together. And I'm sure Jethro would agree, but I know if you actually took action on that idea, right, and drew something up, I'd love to host you on the show and talk about it. What did you learn? What did you draw? Like, let's have a conversation. So if that's you, reach out to us and we'll get you on the show.
So
Anything you want to add?
yeah, real quick, I was coaching 2 principals this week, and that was the exact
Hey,
conversation that we had,
really?
except just a little bit different because I didn't see
Okay.
this Disney thing. But the key thing was you have something that really matters to you, and you can't have 20 different things that really matter to you. These
Thank you.
these
Say it again.
yeah, these vision plans or these strategic goal
Okay.
plans or whatever
Yeah.
that are 20 different things, like nobody's going to do any of those.
Yeah.
And I believe we intentionally do that so that we can have justification for why we fail at them. Because
Mm.
if we really cared, we would say, this is the one thing that really matters, and that's it. And if
That's it.
that were the one thing, we would put all of our effort and energy into that and trust that everything would work out after the fact. That doesn't mean, and this Disney thing is a perfect example of that, that doesn't mean that you don't do other things,
Yeah.
but that the focus is to bring everything back to
To
that
the
one
films.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what is at the center, and that's what really, really matters. And everything leads into that. And that's the key.
Interesting. I really like how you shared that, and it's powerful. So yeah, ruckus maker. What's your one thing? Okay. Let's get into the ideas. And I think this might be the 5th episode. It's getting to a point where we're hitting the numbers where I'm not able to count anymore. But we're gonna keep doing these shows until we get through the content. And if this is your first time listening, and maybe last time, what Jethro and I are doing, we're talking about this idea that ruckus makers do school different and that ruckus makers reject the premise. We believe that there's a lot of education sort of philosophy and commandments, if you will, etched into stone that are handed to us as principals, assistant principals, teachers, counselors, and everybody else that supports school system. And maybe we haven't really deeply thought about what we're being told to accept and if we agree with it, right? And so just like everything Jethro and I teach, keep what works for you. If you're getting a positive result, throw out anything that you try and you don't get a result. And ultimately, think for yourself, identify what you believe about education. We're not talking about your philosophy of education and an assignment and essay, but like the core principles. And you're welcome to reject even what we say too. We encourage that. So the first one that we want to talk about, I believe, is the idea that we're too busy and too important for lunch, right? That like if you're a principal, I mean, honestly, it could be any position. Everybody complains about it. Principal, AP, teacher. I'm just too busy, right, in this role, right? Why is that? A hot plate of steaming vegetables and bologna.
Yes, lots of baloney there. I like to say that busyness is the choice of a hopeless mind. That
Wow. Did you come?
you, I must have. I have it written down two different places, and I like it a lot, and really, I think that that is the case. Like when you choose to be busy, you are actually choosing that, and that is the reality. You're choosing to be busy, and
Oof.
people always ask like, "How's life going?" And people are like, "Oh, it's so busy." And
Yeah.
like, you know what? You decide that. I went to Japan last year while I was writing this book with you. And there's this Ise Jingu shrine in Mie Prefecture that is rebuilt every 20 years, whether it needs it or not. And the whole purpose there is to rebuild it 20 years later on a different spot. And it swaps back and forth between these two spots. It takes 8 years to prepare to build that. And they have to think long term and prepare long term for these things. And so it this is their goal is to rebuild that shrine every 20 years in a different spot than it was the last time they rebuilt it. And like when you start thinking about what are we going to do in 20 years, that really changes how you approach things. And you don't have time to be busy when that's what you're doing. And that's the thing that is so fascinating. It's a choice that you make. And one last story here. When I became an assistant principal, teachers, parents, everybody, the other principals, they said this is what's going to happen. Number one, you're going to have a line out your door and you're going to be running through the halls to deal with issues. And that day, as soon as I heard that from multiple people, I was like, okay, number one, I am never going to have a line out my door. And if that's the case, I am doing something wrong. And number two, I am never going to run inside the school. And I kept both of those commitments the whole 3 years that I was there. And it was that easy, that fast to change the mindset about the school. I'm not buying into this. I'm not going to be so busy that I can't even breathe. I will say after I left, they had to hire two assistant principals to replace me. So they couldn't figure it out apparently, but just a little pat on the back I like to give myself to remember that I had something good figured out.
Yeah, you definitely did. It's really interesting. What I want to add to, well, actually, let me ask you a follow up question. So, like, how did you not have a line out the door, right? So, because some of that makes me think that, that you don't, I talk a lot about what's in your control, what's out of your control, right? And so making the choice not to have a line, that's within your control, but you can't stop, right? Teachers or parents or whatever wanting your attention. So break that down for the listener, watcher, ruckus maker.
Yeah. So the first thing is you don't just send kids down to the office. Okay.
So the line was about discipline and stuff
Yep.
too. Okay. Yep.
Yep. So that was the main thing. You don't just send kids down to
Give
the
away your
office.
power. Mhm.
Yep. You say, come and get this kid, and then I'll come and get the kid. But I'm not going to run to you, and I'm not going to have that kid sitting outside my office with just a referral slip in their hand, expecting me to understand what to do with that. Because every time a teacher sends a kid to the office, they say, I have no power in this situation, and it's all up to the assistant principal or the principal.
Yeah.
And that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted the teacher to retain the power. And so I could come down to the classroom and talk with the teacher and the student. I could come down and get the student. Somebody else could come get the student, but we weren't going to do this thing where we just sent difficult kids out of the room and that was it. There was a lot of pushback against that because that was the culture, but that was very easy to stop. And when I explain it that way, people are like, okay, that makes sense. Retains the authority of the teacher. And that's what we want.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for unpacking that just to make it, realer for the ruckus maker. So, one thing that I wanted to share here is Dr. Michael Gervais. I used to listen to his podcast quite a bit, but sports psychologist, like peak performance type coach, his claim to fame, or at least one of them, he worked with the Seahawks, for quite a while, American football team, and worked with Olympic athletes, right? So how do they get the best out of stuff? And what I found really interesting, and maybe a piece of humble pie. So not only did you get veg and bologna, a steaming plate of it, right? You also get some humble pie today. And it comes from Dr. Michael Gervais. So don't send hate mail to me or Jethro. Send it to Michael. He wants it. But the quote was awesome. He said, on the world stage, right? Because he's working with NFL, pro athletes, Olympic athletes. On the world stage, right? He said, everyone works hard. So nobody's talking about how busy they are. People just know you're filling your day, you're working hard. Like that's kind of just table stakes to be in this competition. And so the interesting topic that everybody wanted to talk about is how do you recover, right? How do you replenish? I did not come up with this phrase. You can't pour from an empty cup, but people seem to think that I've invented this phrase at times. The whole idea, right, is that leadership is service, it's giving, right? But you only have so many finite blocks of energy. And if you're not doing things to recover, you've got nothing to give, right? So if you're scrambling around, busy, 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 never prioritizing you, having some boundaries, that kind of thing, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. The other interesting thing.
Hey, hold on a sec. I got to reject that
I'm
premise
holding
also.
on. Okay.
This whole idea of you can't pour from an empty cup is a way to justify that your job is only to serve others and only take care of others and never to take care of yourself. And so like people say that as a way to say, you need to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Well, my position is that you need to take care of yourself because you are valuable and worth that regardless of what else you do. You don't need to fill your cup so that you can just empty it out for someone else. You need to fill your cup because you are a human being. And as a human being, you have value that is inherent and that is eternal, that is divine. As a person, you need to take care of yourself because you are a human being. And there's nothing else to it. That's your responsibility as a human, is take care of yourself because you are valuable and worth it. And if you happen to decide that what you want to do is use your cup that's full to pour into others, that's great. But you don't fill your cup so that you can just drain it for everybody else.
So the too long didn't read version is taking care of yourself is important, but not just to empty it out for the benefit of others. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Okay. You take care of yourself because you are worth it.
Okay. Really cool. All right. That's fair enough. Fair enough. In The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks talked about Einstein time, and there's a lot going on there. The one thing I want to take away from that book, which we read in the Mastermind, that people always resonate with this as well. Run an experiment again, see if you get a result, keep it, throw it away if you don't. But try not complaining about time for like, I don't know, a day, 3 days, a week, right?
Yes.
Like as long as you can. And I think what you're going to discover if you really do this, you're never going to complain. You'll never want to complain about time again, right? And I'll just leave it there because I want you to discover the secrets, right? Or I guess the results that you'll experience. But just start there. When you notice yourself, because I'm big into that, right? With meditation, mindfulness, awareness, this kind of just like the dialogue, the stories, the things that are going on in my brain. But catch yourself if you are complaining about time, catch yourself and just stop and see what happens. So that was the other big thing about always being busy as a principal. So do you have any pictures?
Yes, I have the picture of a shrine from Japan, just to remind me about that Mia Prefecture Jingu shrine. That is pretty powerful. And then just the quote from Henry David Thoreau is, "It isn't enough to be busy. So are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about?"
Yep. Yeah. That's another, your second piece of humble pie on this episode today. My picture is just, my absolute favorite social media post. And for the people who are just ruckus makers, just listening, not watching, it's just a picture of hot Cheetos, right? But on the left is what you think you're complaining, what you think you're communicating, which is, hey, look at me. I'm so proud and so cool. Jethro, can you see how cool I am? I made time. Somebody as important as me, as a principal, I made time for hot Cheetos and an energy drink. Pat me on the back, right? Send me an award. Call the White House and the Department of Education if it exists, because I'm certain there's an award I have won somewhere. for prioritizing myself. But in
Yeah.
reality, what your post says is that you don't have a spine and you do not prioritize your wellness or health. You obviously don't subscribe to Jethro's belief that every person in the world has value because you're so busy you skip lunch, right? No, you're so busy, or excuse me, you don't value yourself. You haven't prioritized it. Like everybody should be slowing down, eating lunch, recovering, just having a bit of a break. It doesn't have to be 90 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour. Maybe it's 30 minutes, even 15, but enjoy, have lunch. You can do it. Even
Yeah.
if you don't have an assistant principal or two, right? Even if it's just you running a building,
Yeah.
just you get support in other ways. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say about the principals being too busy. Anything
Excellent.
last words for you?
Nope.
Okay.
Let's move on.
We'll keep rolling. And actually, I think we'll hit the next two after the break. So we've got, basically this is all about just wellness and busyness, I think. So if you
I
want
think so
more
too.
humble pie, to keep tuning in. If we've already like made you super mad and you're gonna rage eat some hot Cheetos, it like, you know, like when you're
Rage
eating
eat
them,
some
I
hot
think
Cheetos.
what's going through your head is crunch, crunch hate, crunch Danny, crunch, and Jethro. Like if that's how you're eating your hot Cheetos, great. And we'll see you after this message from our sponsors.
Excellent.
ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division, has been a trusted partner for schools for 30 years. At ODP Business Solutions, we're by your side to meet your evolving education needs. Here's the thing about creating remarkable learning spaces. You need a partner who gets it. Someone who understands that transforming education isn't just about swapping whiteboards for smartboards. It's about reimagining what's possible. That's why innovative school leaders trust ODP Business Solutions. We don't just deliver supplies. We help you design dynamic learning environments that make students actually excited to show up. From tech integrations that bring lessons to life to flexible furniture that transforms any space into a collaboration zone, to sustainable solutions that teach by example, we've got everything you need to do school different. And the best part, you can get it all from a single supplier. That helps you simplify ordering and streamline budgeting while staying compliant with easy access to cooperative contracts. However you want to advance, ODP Business Solutions has 30 years of experience helping districts like yours get ahead. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to learn more. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Too many students with the talent to be tomorrow's engineers give up, convinced they're just not good at school. That's why Play Piper was created. The name comes from the mission to repair the leaky STEM pipeline and guide kids back toward discovery and innovation. With hands-on STEM kits and coding curriculum, students who love gaming and tinkering realize they can also succeed in science, engineering, and beyond. If you're an educator looking for a way to boost engagement, bring joy into STEM, and keep your students on the path of innovation, visit playpiper.com to learn more. That's playpiper.com. Something that drove me nuts as a ruckus maker was hearing teachers say things like, I taught it, they should have learned it. But really, some teachers just don't know how to teach or reteach for that matter so that all kids get it. That's where IXL comes in. IXL's diagnostic automatically identifies knowledge gaps for teachers and provides them with a personalized growth plan for each individual student. Teachers can step into the classroom every day knowing what their students know and what they don't know. IXL's adaptive platform makes differentiating instruction easy. As students learn, IXL adjusts to the right level of difficulty for each student. Close knowledge gaps and accelerate learning with IXL. Get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right. And I'm back with Jethro Jones from the Transformative Principle. We're talking about how ruckus makers reject the premise. The first one was basically that principle, the role of principle, just means that you're always inherently busy, 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 and can't have a life, and you're too important for lunch. Now, within this idea of busyness is this idea of work. And the premise that I reject is that, and this will sound crazy to the ruckus maker engaging with this content, but the idea is that principals should always work hard, right? And I'm like, maybe. So, you want me to open this one up, or you want to?
Yeah, why don't you? Because I think you and I took this in a different path. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on it.
Imagine that, two creative minds going in different areas. For me, like there's a couple things going on. So one, all humans have value. That's true. All work doesn't. So, but why do we treat it the same, right? And so people get their minds blown when I say, not all work needs a effort, right? A lot of leaders we support, are high performers, but right, if they're putting in a effort on everything, even things they know no one's going to look at and no one cares about, they're just asked to do it and they need to turn it in. You're wasting energy, right? You're not
Mhm.
prioritizing. And so, yeah, maybe that thing that nobody looks at, and sometimes that's the school improvement plan. Maybe you do a C or D effort, right? Just because you need to turn it in. The supervisor says, great job, and they don't give you any feedback, which just proves they didn't look. They just wanted
Mhm.
compliance. I wrote about that, a few months ago because you were going there already, like strategic plans, too many goals, right? And that might be an excuse. We're not a high level district because we just have so many things we're trying to achieve, right? It's a way out. It's an excuse, a way of hiding, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, if you're putting a effort into all that stuff, like what's going on? And anyways, like I said, I wrote about this a few months ago. Somebody wrote in and they said, we actually have a 1-page school improvement plan and it guides everything we do. And I'll say, you can fill in the blank with whatever word you choose. But I was shocked, Jethro, shocked, all caps, because nobody's ever written in. It's to prove me wrong on that one. And I was
Mhm.
so happy, right, that somebody did. And it was really pretty cool. And then I ended up sending another email just sharing, here's an example of somebody doing it right, right? It's just really, really pretty neat. But usually it's like a effort on all the stuff, even things that don't matter. And essentially, what I'm replacing this premise with is yes, principals should work hard, but only on the right stuff, right? And so that's the key distinction there. What do you got for us?
Yeah, there are a few things I love about that. First is working on the right things is what really matters. So, yes, principals should work hard, but more important, they should work smart, which means give the effort to the things that matter. One of my things that I lived by as a principal was I don't do things until the third time the district office asks for it. Because the
Ah,
district office is notorious for asking for things that don't matter and don't mean anything. And so on the third time they asked me, that's when I knew this must really be important because they keep asking me about it. But so many times before that, I had done things, turned them in, and then asked, hey, what did you do with this? And they would say, oh, we decided we didn't need to worry about that. So we're not going to, we didn't
mm,
even look at it. We just moved on to some other thing. It was an idea. So we threw it at you. One of my bosses used to say that our time is not our own. And that just grated on me whenever she said that like, we can't make a decision for ourselves because we just do what our bosses tell us to do, what this was in the curriculum department, the superintendent or the board says do this. And so then we react. And I was like, no, that is no way to live. That's terrible. And so that's not what I want. What I say here is achievement is gained through intentional motion. And so that's where my picture for this one really illustrates it. I think I got a blur turned on, so I apologize for that. But the old premise is running on a treadmill, and the
yeah.
new premise is having a goal and working towards that goal, not just doing, not just run on the treadmill forever because you can. And it's easy to do that in a school because there are so many things that take up your attention. But I bet 90% of that you could just get rid of. For example, my school district in Alaska, they said you are required to review teacher lesson plans or teachers are required to turn in lesson plans every week. That was the
Mhm.
requirement.
Mhm.
I said, who checks on me to see that I'm doing that? And they're like, nobody does. And so I said, teachers, you don't have to turn these in anymore because I'm not going to read them. I know that.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you need to make them, then make them. But I'm in your classrooms. I know what you're doing. So, a lesson plan is not necessarily the thing that has to be done. And a lot of teachers were like, but we have to turn them in. We've always turned them in. And I was like, well, you don't have to. If you want, here's a Dropbox folder you can put them in, but I'm never going to look at them. And I didn't. And a lot of people stopped turning them in. Some people still did because they just felt like they had to. And I was like, you got to give this up because I'm not looking at this. And there was no real purpose for looking at lesson plans, and there was no instructional purpose or anything. And so we just stopped doing it. And it was actually quite easy to make that change.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's another compliance piece. I think if you're reading and having a dialogue and providing meaningful feedback, there's worth in it. But if it's just turning it in to show that you're prepared, right, and this kind of stuff, if we want to be treated as professionals, act as professionals, like just be prepared and deliver great lessons, and then I will give you feedback if you're doing that or not, right? But we don't need a million micromanagement steps to lead up to that piece.
Definitely not.
So, cool. Yeah, I think you already said this by John Wooden, the don't mistake activity with achievement, right? So great quote there. In any pictures, I've got activity, like a bunch of dots,
Yeah.
it almost looks like scatter plot, and then the bullseye of achievement. And then I got, activity, a to-do list with 5 things, and achievement, the one thing that got completed. So cool. Any images for you?
Just the old premise was run on the treadmill. The new premise
Oh
is
yeah, that's right.
going
Sorry.
up that's all good.
I forgot that we went over that one. Cool. All right. So we kind of talked about busyness and then working hard, and then what comes with that. And I think this is great because now we're going to give you just a wonderful piece of red velvet cake. It's delicious. This
So
one,
yummy.
yeah, different than the hot steaming pile of bologna and vegetables, different than the humble pie, which you probably did not like. You will like this red velvet cake, assuming you like red velvet cake, but it also has no calories. You can just enjoy. There's no consequences to eating this because what Jethro and I want to cover here on the last piece, we've talked busyness, we talked working hard. Now we're going to talk about stress, right? That principles are just always stressed. We're going to give you some solutions into like how you can deal with that, right? So for me, I said 2 things here in terms of rejecting it. One, that sort of like think of breathing as a technology, and by focusing on your
Well,
breath.
hold on a sec. You didn't share
Okay.
what the premise was that we're rejecting.
No, I did. You missed it. It was the idea that being a principal is always stressed.
Okay. Sorry, I did miss it. I apologize.
It's okay. You're keeping me honest. That's what you're here for. So how could we launch into a premise we haven't rejected? So in half the time, I don't know what I'm talking about anyways. And then I get really scared. Like, am I going to be able to catch the thread that I thought I knew I was talking about?
I
Or
know.
is
I'm
it all going to
sorry.
unravel? And then people are going to throw daggers at me and tie a rock to a rope to my ankle and just drop me in the Indian Ocean, which for some reason is just my least favorite ocean.
That makes sense.
It
Indian
makes
is the
sense.
worst ocean in the world. The Pacific is obviously the best. Just
It's
saying.
okay. Yeah, I'm by the Atlantic, but I do like Pacific too. I picked Indian randomly. It's just what popped in my head. All right. So think about breathing as a technology. And like, honestly, it seems silly, but very few people like focus on this. Just slow inhales and exhales for about a minute, right? Resets your physiology, you know? And so if you realize like I am just running around like crazy, there's the fundamentals that you can take care of. And usually like it's almost like I probably shouldn't even do coaching calls half the time because when someone wants to talk about all the stuff they want to talk about, and maybe I ask, how's your eating, your sleeping, your moving, your breathing, your unplugging, like you're doing a great job of that from social media, they'll give themselves low marks on all the fundamentals, right? That's why you're stressed. You're not eating hot Cheetos. Remember, I hate Danny and Jethro, number one. Rage eating hot Cheetos. I never knew that would come into this conversation. They're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not moving, like all the fundamentals, breathing and unplugging. So do that stuff, breathing as a technology, eating, all that. And then the other thing that I realized too is we were talking about the stories that we're always telling ourselves. And so the idea there is not to bite the hook, right? So you had that dangling thought of the parent who made you feel ashamed or angry or afraid or whatever, and it could be the teacher, it could be the student or whatever. And something could have really happened. There can be things that never even happened, and you're adding and labeling all this judgment on top of it that is just not true. And if you take the bait and bite the hook, then just leads to more pain and suffering, right? And so the key there is just to like, don't do that. Just watch it, let it go. And I guarantee another thought's gonna, pop into your head, and you and I can riff why the Pacific Ocean actually isn't that great. So it's like things change. Change is the only constant. So anything you want to add in terms of why
Yeah.
principles don't always need to be stressed or any solutions you have?
Well, I mean, it goes back to the idea of busyness, that there is some
Mm,
value that you give yourself by being stressed and being under the gun. And when I talk about student discipline, I talk about it like this, that kids really love riding roller coasters because it's kind of thrilling. And so when they do inappropriate stuff at school, it's the same kind of thing. They see how close to the edge they can get and how scary, quote unquote, it can be, or how thrilling it can be. And a lot of times, like, that's just the whole point is I'm breaking this rule just to see what it feels like. And honestly, I know that I'm in a safe place and I can break it and I won't actually get hurt. Just like on roller coasters, I can defy the laws of gravity and
mm,
I'm not going to get hurt, or there's a very small chance of it. And so they do that. And so principals do the same thing. They're like, "Oh, I have to be stressed all the time because this job is so hard." Or they feel guilty that they're making more money than their teachers, and so they have to make it seem like they are so stressed and the job is so hard. When in reality, it really isn't, or it doesn't have to be. And you put a
mm-hmm,
lot of that on yourself. And so figuring out a way to recenter and chill out and not be so stressed and recognize that this isn't life and death. Like most of the time, most of the things you're dealing with are not as high stakes as you make them feel. And you make them feel high stakes so that you can feel important, like you're doing something that is valuable. But education is valuable in and of itself. And so it doesn't have to be like, we're not performing heart surgery here where one wrong action is going to kill somebody. We are educating kids and it doesn't have to be that stressful.
Jethro, now you're gonna make me. Well, you don't make me do anything. I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna choose to end the episode from my perspective. I'll let you have the last word because maybe the ruckus maker might need it. Here's more humble pie, right? But let's just zoom out. Forest from the trees. You were talking about like heart surgery. Nobody's gonna die. I'm gonna assert that nobody cares, right, about
Mm,
your work. I mean, they care in this
preach.
moment. They care in this moment. And they might care for a little bit. And listen, we're serving students. We want them to have a successful future and all this kind of stuff. And we should obviously like we're not saying don't focus, don't be intentional, don't work hard, right? And at times be very busy. And you should certainly be doing everything you can to set our kiddos up for success. But you know, Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor of an empire, right? Like pretty powerful dude, basically was reflecting on, will people even remember what we did here, right? And then he named out, I don't remember who, but he named out all these leaders. Like he's like, it's just gonna be like specks of dust. Like, you know what I mean?
You don't
So
remember who? Boy, does that drive the point home or what?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's what I think. Even when I'm getting stressed about this work, right? And how to support school leaders, like I know it makes an impact. And I know people enjoy the show, they enjoy the coaching and the programs we put on. But at the end of the day, right? Like I'm not disillusioned in 50 years, 100 years. Are people going to remember ruckus makers? I don't know. Probably not. And
Yeah.
so then how should that change how I choose to spend each day? And more importantly, how does it change who I want to be right now, right? So nobody's going to remember all the stuff. And I guess some like psycho crazy person could be like, well, then I'm going to do all this bad thing. Like, that's not, go get a therapist and get some
That's
help.
not what we're saying,
If,
to be
yeah,
clear.
if your brain went there, like, go get help, right? But to me, it's like, oh man, I want to be more loving, more patient, more kind, more generous, accumulating all this stuff. It doesn't come with us. Hey, this is an old man episode.
It is.
We're
It is
talking
definitely.
about life.
All right,
The
get this.
finitude.
So, everybody who's listening, you probably know who is the principal before you at your school.
Yeah.
The chance that you know the principal before that principal, it goes down tremendously.
Yeah.
But your school has likely been around for a few decades. Most schools have.
Yeah.
Can you name any of the previous principals? Are
Right.
any of their pictures hanging up in your school? It's possible, but it's not very likely. The thing is, when you leave your school, they are going to find someone else to replace you just like that in a heartbeat. You are going to be not even a footnote in the history of that school so fast. So before you think that like every single decision you make is the most important decision and you are running the school and it's so important that you do it perfectly, just remember, as soon as the district is done with you, you're gone. That's all there is. Period. End of story. You're not going to stick around if they have a better option. And that's just how it is. The union doesn't matter. The contract doesn't matter. If they decide you're done, you're done. And, I have seen that play out so many times, and so many principals that I've coached have been like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. And then either they did or they didn't. But regardless, it's going to move on. This is a huge machine. You are simply a cog in the machine. And while your work is important to the people that it's affecting, it is not the end of the world, and it is not life and death. It is very short, and your time there will be very short. And it's okay to recognize that and move on.
Right on. All right. Well, Jethro, thanks for joining me again on the Ruckus Cast here. I think the next time we team up, we'll be over at Transformative Principal. And then, programming as usual, and can't wait to have you back on the show.
Okay. Sounds good, man. Always a pleasure. We'll see you next time.
Always a pleasure. Hey, Ruckus Makers, thanks again for pressing play. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. And before you go, if today's episode shifted something in you so that you want to do school different, or maybe you have a new idea about how to reimagine education on your campus, then check out My Principal Coach. It's your AI-powered leadership mentor. It's trained on 10 years of mastermind and private coaching experience that I've had. It's like having a world-class Ruckus Maker mentor in your pocket 24/7. You can start your free 7-day trial at myprincipalcoach.com.